Good morning, everybody. Good morning, wherever you are. Thank you so much for tuning in. This morning, we're going to continue with talking about, my book. Thank you, Mrs.G, which you will find on Amazon and on other house websites. Thank you so much. If you have bought the book, I hope you're enjoying it. Thank you. Today, I was going to talk about IQ. I've already done the video, but I decided not to post it. That's why you didn't have anything last week. But today I want to talk about something very important. Um, a few days ago, and on TikTok, I saw a young man who is in Ireland, an African young man who is in Ireland, and he was talking about how Black people hate each other. And he was talking about, you know, he can go to white areas, he won't get, they say jumped or hit, but he will go to Black areas, and they will, if you're not in from that area, they will come and want to beat you up, and basically just talking about all the negative things that they encounter as young people, Black people in the West. And I was really upset about this. The reason I was upset, and I was talking to my sons about it. The reason I was upset is that it really showed me that our young people do not know our history. And I feel that it is very irresponsible for a young person to talk about a race, you know, in its totality and comment on it based on the little experience they've had. First of all, this experience is just a little dot in a huge sea. There's so many Black people. And secondly, if you do not know our history, the history of Black people is a very complex and painful history that if our children knew about it, they will not say things about our race so carelessly. So it is a responsibility for all parents to teach our children our history. And I understand because most parents will say to their children, actually, don't hang around with Black people, they're a lot of trouble. And unfortunately, those parents too do not know their history. And you might think, there's when I wrote this book, it came from a place where I realized that I too was ignorant of my history. I was one of those people who hated Black people, who felt, oh, Black people are like, this and that, until I read my history and realized that the way I was thinking was what was I was conditioned to think. The way I thought of myself was what I was conditioned to think about myself. In other words, the I had internalized my oppression. I had started looking at people who are like me the same way that uh, the white race looked at us, or perhaps uh, told us to look at ourselves. Um, it's very important because I, when I started actually a few years ago, I wanted to be a motivational speaker because I have mentored a lot of people, in my Christian circles, and I felt like I looked at Africa and I thought I could just go there and have, do motivational speaking and, really motivate people to get up and do something. But I think God knew that what my desire came from a place which was pure, of course. And a lot of times you want to jump the gun, right? So I was talking to myself. I said, I'm just going to go and do motivational, write a book and just go around. But I think it was when one of my sons came home, and he was suffering from depression. And I sought to understand what had happened in his mind. And while I was doing that, I bumped into um, how the mind works. And I was reading, stuff by Dr. Dispenza, Joe Dispenza, and he was talking about the subconscious mind. The how our subconscious mind actually can take over, so that we are not able to think about to do the things that we logically think to do. So then I went back to my young days, where, because I partly my youth was in colonization, and I started to realize that the way I looked at white people was the way I had been raised to look at white people. And I started to look at every other angle, and I realized that I started to worry about, how did I bring up my children? Did I bring them up knowing who they are? Because when I was growing up, I did not know who I was as a Black person. So there was no way I was going to be able to raise children who knew who they were as Black people. And as I read, I realized that there's so much out there that tells us that 95% of our brain energy goes to our subconscious mind, and only 5% is plugged into the reality. And I realized that I woke up every morning motivating, being motivated, motivation. I can have a motivational quote, which is amazing, but I was not able to actually act it out. And I realized the reason why is because I was wired to the past. Most of what I did all day was wired to what I normally do. So to actually get myself to get out of that and be able to do something different was something I had to consciously do. I had to be consciously self-aware. So I don't blame the parents of this young person, because obviously most parents, colonization, as I said, is still really very, very much a part of our lives. Because if anybody had to be told a history of the people, our people, and I see a lot of people who are activists for Black people. You see them very passionate. And the reason why is because they've dug into our history and realized the injustice, the pain that went through. And that pain, that oppression is still there. And what's worse is that we are oppressing ourselves now. You know, it is very sad that we actually are looking at ourselves the exact same way that we were told to look at ourselves. Thomas Mccauley, sorry, uh, sorry, Shashi Thoreau. I always, I always talk about him. He wrote the book, a lot of books, and he wrote about the book Inglorious Empire. And he talks a lot about the tortures, the killings, the famines, everything, that went through the 200 years that India was colonized. And of course, a lot of people say to him, they ask him, they say, oh, we built the railways for you. But of course, the railways were built to actually take loot everything out of India. So the railways were never built for to help the people, the Indian people. They were actually built so that the looting can go on, so that they can take everything out and loot everything out. So whatever was done, which looked like something that brought progress, was always for the benefit of the empire. And also, he's asked about education. And I didn't know this actually until I heard him say education was actually introduced, Thomas Mccauley wanted to say, let's educate a few people who will become the interpreters between us and these people. So basically, they are people that said, we want them to sort of um, sip into the dialects, the signs of the Western world. So this they were meant as a as a go in between the people and the empire. So what happened was they were taught, they were meant to be, they said, we want to build a people who have a skin, Indian skin, but English in their way, in their morals, in their everything. So basically the education that was there was meant to brainwash. So the people that we looked up to, who were meant to be educated, were people who were more brainwashed. They were people who were really not like us. They were people who were westernized in every way they do, in everything they do. So that explains then the division that came afterwards. Because then those people, those uh, bourgeoisie, there was a class of people who were meant to be educated, who looked at other people and saw them as less. And they saw themselves as, the British, even though they never were going to be. So that is what perhaps this child was raised to believe. That for as long as he's educated and everything, he's then better than any other Black person. And then he speaks for the race. Now, that's irresponsible, as I said. But what bothered me really was that that same child, a few clips before that, had talked about an incident that happened in class. That in a class, she has somebody from another, from another ethnicity, and they were joking around. And the teacher, Irish teacher, walked in, and then he started laughing. And they said, "Why are you laughing, miss?" And she said, "Oh, you know, I just looked at you, and I was reminded of a trachea advert." And people who live in Ireland know what a trachea, is. It's a charity that's supposed to be, and that aids Africa, helps Africa, water, all those things. So this is the same child who does not know. He's saying Black people are bad, but he is not being accepted where he thinks he is supposed to belong. So we have children who are growing up who really don't know where they belong, because of the fact that they have not read their history, dug into their history, and realized why they think the way they think. Because until you know why you think the way you think, you will carry on. And unfortunately, most of Africa thinks that way. So you can see that even if I had gone to motivate Africa, I realized then that I had to I had to think about the mindset. I had to think about how the colonial mentality was to be erased. So I had to read and see how we think the way we think. So it was not a simple act of just going and motivating people. I realized it was I had to go back and look at why we thought the way we thought. We're not like any other people. We have gone through a lot more than most people. So to this day, even when you think about South Africa, there were three grades of people. They were the obviously the whites were at the top, and then in the middle there were the Indians, and the mixed race, and then at the bottom. So we really were always looked at as the lowest people. And until we raise our thinking above that, we can be motivated only to the extent where we are able to do better than other blacks, but never above. So this is what bothers me really, and this is something that I felt like I should talk about before we even talk about the fact that, the IQ thing, which is really a brainwashing thing, as you will find out when I talk about it next time. So, and there's a word called epistemic violence, and this it's a violence against the mind, actually, through knowledge. So what they wanted us to do is that they wanted to frame the knowledge that they wanted us to have, and keep us in a place where the knowledge we had was limited to what they could control. And it meant then that any other possibilities of knowledge were out of our reach. And we would beat our chests and believe that we are knowledgeable, but we're not. Unless knowledge is free and is broad and is not limited to anything, it is not knowledge. So if we've gone to school, if we've read, until we start reading about who we are as a people, and you will not find that in any university, really. Unfortunately, I think even in Africa, it might be hard to actually find a place where you really dig deep into what we are. I know there's a few people who have written about colonization, but it really comes from research. Unfortunately, we have not come to a place where we do whole curriculums of teaching people about who we are. And I think it's important to know the history, but it's also important to know the psychological effect of that history on our people before we can. So that's the little bit I wanted to share today, but I will go on and share the IQ as I said 2 weeks ago. So be responsible and at least teach your children to know your history so that they do not brand your race, especially now where there's, social media. Really, we look like fools when we allow our children to say black people are they're the problem. So many children are saying that, and it's really worrying. These are children who don't know. These are children who know that they are not accepted on the other side, but they still are. And I mean, that kind of, it's very sad. So obviously, they suffer from dissonance. They don't know, they're in between two beliefs. They don't know who they are. And it is dangerous. And it is sad. And they will never reach their peak if they go in that direction. So know who you are. Thank you so much. Again, my website is now up, and it's www.northlandmakiwa.com. You can go on there and search. All my, everything that I've done lately is on it. And it was done by FOSOA. So it's www.fosoa.ie. This is the book. Thank you, Mrs. G. Thank you very much. Bye.